Welcome to Order Militaris Video TV and Real Life Film Catholics, and what we do is all for free and for the love of Jesus Christ and for our Holy Mother, the Church, and we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Today we are on Artsakh Genocide Day 6 with Brother Alexis.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV. We're for this very sad and somber series. We're making this series to keep the donors to the Armenian Refugee Fund informed daily of what's going on in the ground, so you realize how great the need is. I want to thank the donors. The 5 donors who already given $836. Goal on this fund is to raise $100,000. Order Militaris Catholicus is an international security effort founded in 2016 for the defense of persecuted Christians. So we've been helping the Armenians since 2020 and following the events there very closely. Our fund gathers donation and will distribute them to registered charities in the Armenian Republic who are proven records helping refugees from Artsakh. And you can donate 5 ways: GPay, Apple Pay, Zelle Pay, Wise Pay, Stripe, PayPal, credit card, Bankwire. So I think maybe it's more than 5 ways. So AJ, what is the recent news? We've had a major change since yesterday. Now we can talk about refugees.
Yeah, so still yesterday at least 23 wounded have been allowed to leave Stefankirk to go to Yerevan for the advanced medical treatment there. And that was the first sign of something different is changing. Then all of a sudden, 40 people arrived, women and children, and in the border in Armenia. And then another large group of families arrived, totaling 377 people. And by the end of the day, it was over 1,000 refugees or forcibly displaced Armenians from Artsakh. And when nighttime came, people are still in their lines waiting for the next ride to Armenia for today. So they probably already had a few shipments of families already. We'll find out later today when I get onto Twitter to see what the news is. And there's this one little girl going around collecting candy, and just smiling, but her mom's like, "You want to eat any of that?" Like, "No, I'm going to collect it." She had to apologize to the Red Cross for these people for not trying the candy out.
Well, she's been starved for 10 months. She's thinking of the future. That's how sad and tragic it is. So the Armenian government 2 days ago announced it was ready to receive 40,000 Armenian families. And having left everything, their home, their belongings, and spending the winter in Armenia, each of these families is probably going to need around $10,000 of humanitarian assistance. That's $400 million. Our fund, we're only aiming to raise $100,000 for a small organization. So to put in perspective how great is the need out there. News has come out now, more certain news about what went on in the outlying villages in Artsakh in the first moments of the war. What is that, AJ?
Yeah, that direct bombing and shelling of homes were actually targeted, and if your home didn't have a shelter underneath it with direct access and you had to run to the shelter which goes underground, they would target you running, and they would shell that as well. Then when they approached the villages, they broke out, I don't know what they use, either scimitar or axe, whatever they have, and begin to behead the young children, and then separate the elder children from the men, and then execute the same way the Russians did in Irpin, Bucha, and elsewhere.
Did they execute women and girls, or only men and boys?
I think they executed everyone. Might have done stuff to women first.
What's the estimate of casualties in these outlying villages so far?
Well over 1,000. They don't know because they just don't know if they're living or dead, and so they're saying at least over 1,000.
Okay, so now we have the facts to say for certain that Azerbaijan is involved in ethnic cleansing, which in certain parts of the territory is also genocide. This is genocide. They killed everyone in these outlying villages. What is the Armenian government saying about their what they're doing in Artsakh? What do they call this? They call this a war?
They're calling
Not the Armenian, the Azerbaijan government, excuse me.
they're calling it the demilitarization of Armenian terrorists.
And the Armenian government, what is it saying?
Pashtun saying, "Oh, we won't go to war against Azerbaijan to protect Artsakh."
But is Armenia still under bombardment in its own territory from Azerbaijan?
We don't know that, but so I guess not, because that's where the people were brought to the border towns.
Are there protests around the world against what the Azeri regime is doing in eastern Armenia?
Yeah, they're in Montreal, Toronto, Bern, Switzerland, Vienna, Austria, Chicago. They'll be in California tomorrow night at the Presidential Library for Ronald Reagan, and then also got Azerbaijanis actually standing up and protesting with the Armenians against their own government, and so far 5 have been arrested.
Are there any governments around the world condemning the Azeri regime?
Not as openly and forcefully as Argentina is.
And what is Argentina said and done?
They named the region properly as Artsakh. They have called for sanctions and seizures of assets of the Aliyev regime. And,
Okay, and God bless the government of Argentina. Any word from Pope Francis equal to that?
no,
No, and we're Catholics and we find this totally shameful. What do we have other than the Red Cross? Have you seen any appeals by other international or NGOs or charities or humanitarian organizations seeking help for these refugees?
no.
Yeah, so our organization is one of the few that has an appeal going, which is strange because we're not Armenians. And the Armenians are predominantly not Catholic, although there are a small percentage of Catholics in the Armenian Republic who are Catholics. The Catholics who are Armenian mostly live in Turkey and in Israel and in Lebanon and abroad. So if you're wondering how you can get your aid to Armenia through an organization that is familiar with going on the ground, I suggest and I urge and I plead with you to make a generous donation to our Armenian Refugee Fund, because we're out ahead of everyone else who actually knew this was going to happen. And on the 20th, we began our appeal. And we will donate 100% of your donation to the Armenian charities on the ground that are helping these refugees. And their needs aren't going to go away in the next week. This is going to be all winter. And they're going to need food, clothing, housing. They're going to need medical attention. They're going to need, many of them perhaps will need psychological attention from the shock of what they saw. And many of them are going to need to be buried because eventually, hopefully, the Azeri government will give up the bodies and their loved ones will have to be buried in Armenia. And these are people who have lost everything out of hatred for the name of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
What's your hope, AJ? Have you seen any movement in the international scene to establish peacekeepers, stop this action, or?
No, but they're asking and they're constantly asking. But in the last show I did that ended the series on the United Nations, what is going on in Artsakh is pretty much a safe zone without UN peacekeepers on the ground.
Would it be get better if the were UN peacekeepers on the ground?
No.
A
Well,
Russian peacekeeper
yeah,
was killed the other day. What's his name, and what do you think happened to him?
yeah, let me get to it real quick. So much stuff here. Sorry. Okay, where you at, buddy? There you are. 39-year-old Anton Shirovin. He's from the Rostov region of Russia. He leaves behind a wife and two daughters. And they're pretty much targeting the good Russian peacekeepers who are actually doing their job. And I think he saw something and was trying to do something about it, and they shot him dead.
And I think the Azeri government has this policy because they want to discourage international peacekeepers coming into the territory in the future too. This is a horrible tragedy. So it looks like maybe 2,000, 2,500 individuals have already been genocided, Christians genocided in the Artsakh Republic's territories. It's pretty clear that the government of the Azeri regime intended genocide in the beginning, and maybe now with international pressure is decided to ratchet that down to ethnic cleansing, both of which are crimes against humanity. And I will remind everyone in the audience that the Armenian people have lived in this land for 10,000 years. The Azeris only appeared in the last 250 years in the area. So it's outrageous that the Azeri government saying that they're ending the occupation. That's outrageous. They're the occupiers of the land here. And it's an outrage that the international press and world leaders are not raising their voices for the defense of Christians in Artsakh. The mere fact that the international community didn't recognize the existence of the Artsakh Republic means nothing other than they're Christophobes. They hate Jesus Christ because no one had any problem recognizing the existence of the State of Israel. Nations immediately jumped to it. And the modern Israeli state was actually started by a terrorist action. And the Artsakh state was not. There were Armenians living in Artsakh all through the Soviet period. Had been living there constantly for 10,000 years. They didn't just pop in, and try to take over the territory the way the Azeri government says so. So these are native Christian peoples, and Armenia is the first Christian nation. And we Christians from around the world, we have to decide who we're going to take a stand with, Christ and his people, or the enemies of Christ and the persecutors of Christ's people. And from a distance, what can we do other than send humanitarian aid? So I ask you to be generous and consider donating to our Armenian Refugee Appeal, which is a 503 dedicated fund, and all your donations will go to Armenians, refugees in Armenia.
Yeah. And one last thing. What they don't need on the ground is UN peacekeepers keeping the status quo, but they actually do have another thing that they can do, which would be even better. It's called the protected area, where you force UN to keep the peace by using military arms. And this is where the military that comes in has to use their weapons to keep the peace and also to stop any attacks by the enemy.
So the UN has tools to stop this.
Yeah. You just gotta ask for the right ones. Yeah. So make sure if you want to ask the UN for help, make sure you mark it down as the protected area where the military has to do their job and not let Azerbaijan continue with the status quo. That's it.
Thank you for having me on Auto Militaris Radio TV. Please like, share this program on all social media platforms because the media around the world are censoring what's going on. We've been changing what it's being called. And no one's going to find out what the truth of what's going on except from an organization actually cares for the Armenian refugees like ourselves. And each day on our fundraising pages, we will update this video with the latest edition.
This is Auto Militaris Radio TV signing off. Day is full.
Day is full.